Dennis Rader was a church leader in Wichita, but behind that facade, he was a meticulous murderer. Just imagine the moment a woman's scream pierced the air, sending shockwaves through the city. What happened next? Chaos unfolded in Wichita, and the truth is more chilling than you can imagine. A killer stalked the streets. No one was safe. Darkness lurked within Dennis Rader. Born on March 9, 1945, his life seemed normal. Rader's targets were mostly women, but men and children were not spared. He killed without mercy. A cryptic message arrived. The police were baffled. The killer remained at large. Rader's methods were calculated. He planned each move. His victims never saw him coming. A family was torn apart. A mother, father, and children, all killed in cold blood. The community was paralyzed. Fear gripped every heart. No one knew what would happen next. Rader's motives were unclear. But his actions were brutal. He left a trail of death. A detective was assigned. He vowed to catch the killer. But Rader was always one step ahead. The investigation was ongoing. Clues were scarce. The detective was frustrated. Would they ever catch him? A breakthrough came. A small detail was noticed. It could lead to the killer. The detective's eyes narrowed. He studied the evidence. A connection was made. Rader's pattern was emerging. He was a meticulous killer, but he made a mistake. The mistake was small, but it could be crucial. The detective pounced on it. The hunt was on. Rader was being tracked, but he was still elusive. The community held its breath. The killer could strike again, any moment, any time. The detective worked tirelessly. He followed every lead. Rader's capture was his only goal. But Rader was cunning. He covered his tracks. The detective was getting nowhere. A glimmer of hope appeared. A witness came forward. They might have seen the killer. The witness's words were hesitant, but they sparked a new lead. The detective's eyes lit up. The lead was promising. It could finally bring Rader down. The detective's heart raced with anticipation. The wait was agonizing. The community was on edge. Rader's next move was unpredictable, and then silence. The killer seemed to vanish. The detective was left with nothing. The case went cold. Rader was still out there. The community lived in fear, but the detective refused to give up. He was determined to catch Rader, no matter what it took. The search continued. Rader's capture was the goal, but he remained one step ahead. The game of cat and mouse, Rader versus the detective. Only one could win. The detective's obsession grew. He was consumed by the case. Rader's capture was his only focus. And then, a breakthrough. A small clue was discovered. It could lead to Rader's downfall. The detective's heart skipped a beat. He knew he was close. Rader's capture was within reach, but Rader was still out there, watching, waiting, and planning. His next move was unknown. The community held its breath. The killer could strike again. Any moment, any time. The detective worked tirelessly. He followed every lead. Rader's capture was his only goal. The wait was agonizing. The community was on edge. Rader's next move was unpredictable. And then a phone call. The detective's heart raced. Was it Rader? The voice on the other end. Was it the killer? The detective's eyes narrowed. The words were cryptic, but they sparked a new lead. The detective's heart raced with anticipation. The lead was promising. It could finally bring Rader down. The detective's eyes lit up, but Rader was cunning. He covered his tracks. The detective was getting nowhere. The game of cat and mouse, Rader versus the detective. Only one could win. The detective's obsession grew. He was consumed by the case. Rader's capture was his only focus. And then a revelation. A shocking truth emerged. Rader's true identity was hidden. The detective's eyes widened. He knew he was close. Rader's capture was within reach, but Rader was still out there, watching, waiting, and planning. His next move was unknown. The community held its breath. The killer could strike again, any moment, any time. The detective worked tirelessly. He followed every lead. Rader's capture was his only goal. The wait was agonizing. The community was on edge. Rader's next move was unpredictable. And then a question. Would the detective catch Rader? Only time would tell. On February 25, 2005, a package arrived KTV. It contained a floppy disk and a letter. The detective's heart skipped a beat. Rader's handwriting was unmistakable. The game was almost over. Detective Ken Landwehr's phone rang. He answered, his voice firm. A cryptic message on the other end sparked a new lead. The detective's eyes locked onto a name, Dennis Rader. A floppy disk and letter arrived at Cake TV on February 25, 2005. Landwehr's heart skipped a beat. Rader's handwriting was unmistakable. The game was almost over. Landwehr's team worked tirelessly, following every lead. Rader's capture was their only goal. The community held its breath, waiting for the killer's next move. In Park City, a suburb of Wichita, a revelation emerged. A shocking truth about Rader's identity. Landwehr's eyes widened, knowing he was close. Rader's capture was within reach. The detective's obsession grew. He was consumed by the case. Rader's true identity was hidden, but Landwehr was determined to uncover it. The wait was agonizing, but the end was near. A question lingered. Would Landwehr catch Rader before he struck again? The community was on edge, waiting for the answer. The detective's focus was unwavering. Rader's capture was his only goal. Landwehr's eyes narrowed, studying the evidence. The floppy disk and letter were the keys to unlocking Rader's secrets. The detective's heart raced with anticipation, knowing he was closing in on the killer. The game of cat and mouse was almost over. Rader versus Landwehr. Only one could win. The community held its breath, waiting for the outcome. The detective's determination was unwavering. He would bring Rader to justice. On February 27, 2005, Landwehr's team received a crucial tip from a local resident. The informant claimed to have seen Rader's vehicle near the scene of one of the murders. Landwehr's eyes scanned the surveillance footage, his mind racing with possibilities. A partial license plate number was visible, and he knew it was a breakthrough. The detectives' team sprang into action, tracking down every vehicle with a matching plate number. The investigation led them to a small church in Park City, where Rader was a member. Landwehr's heart skipped a beat as he discovered Rader's involvement with the church. The killer's facade was crumbling, and the detective was closing in. A search warrant was obtained for Rader's home, and on February 28, 2005, the police arrived at his doorstep. Rader's wife, Paula, answered, her eyes wide with fear. Landwehr's team began to search the premises, uncovering a treasure trove of evidence. A cryptic message on Rader's computer caught the detective's attention. The BTK is still alive. The investigation was reaching its climax, and Landwehr's team was working around the clock. On March 1, 2005, Rader was brought in for questioning. His calm demeanor belied the turmoil inside, as he knew the game was almost over. Landwehr's eyes locked onto Rader's, searching for any sign of weakness. The killer's mask was beginning to slip, and the detective was ready to pounce. As the interrogation continued, Rader's alibi for the murders began to unravel. Landwehr's team presented him with the evidence, and the killer's composure began to crumble. The detective's determination had finally paid off, and Rader's capture was imminent. The community would soon be able to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that the BTK killer was behind bars. But just as the investigation seemed to be reaching its conclusion, a shocking revelation emerged. Rader's daughter, Carrie, had been unaware of her father's dark secret. Her world was about to be turned upside down as she struggled to come to terms with the monster her father had become. The aftermath of Rader's capture would be just as devastating as the crimes he had committed, leaving a trail of broken lives in its wake. The trial was approaching, and the community was eager for justice. On June 27, 2005, Rader pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder. The courtroom was filled with emotion, as the victims' families finally received the closure they had been seeking. Landwehr's team had worked tirelessly to bring Rader to justice, and their dedication had paid off. The BTK killer's reign of terror was finally over, and the city of Wichita could begin to heal. Detective Landwehr sat across from Dennis Rader, his eyes locked onto the killers. Rader's calm demeanor was beginning to crack. Landwehr's team had found a discrepancy in Rader's alibi for the Otero murders. The detective pressed Rader for an explanation. Rader's voice trembled as he tried to maintain his composure. A search of Rader's home revealed a cryptic letter detailing his twisted fantasies. The letter was dated February 1974, the same month as the Otero murders. Landwehr's eyes narrowed as he read the letter, his mind racing with the implications. Rader's mask was slipping, and the detective was closing in. Rader's daughter, Carrie, was about to receive devastating news. Her father, the man she loved and respected, was a serial killer. The revelation would shatter her world, leaving her to grapple with the consequences of her father's actions. As the trial approached, the community held its breath, eager for justice to be served. On June 27, 2005, Rader would plead guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder, bringing an end to the BTK killer's reign of terror. Detective Landwehr's eyes never left Rader's face as he introduced a new piece of evidence, a Polaroid photo of a bound and gagged woman taken in Rader's own bedroom. The photo was dated April 1974, 1 month after the Otero murders. Rader's composure began to crumble, his voice shaking as he claimed the photo was just a harmless fantasy. But Landwehr knew better. The photo was a crucial link to the BTK killer's true identity. As the investigation continued, a new witness emerged, Charlie Otero, the son of the murdered Otero family. Charlie had been just 11 years old when his family was brutally murdered, and the trauma had left him with vivid memories of that fateful day. Landwehr sat down with Charlie, listening intently as he recounted the events of January 15, 1974. Charlie's testimony would prove to be a pivotal moment in the case, as he revealed a previously unknown detail. A suspicious phone call his mother had received just days before the murders. The phone call had come from a man with a raspy voice, claiming to be a friend of the family. But Charlie's mother had been wary, sensing something was off. Landwehr's ears perked up as Charlie recounted the conversation, his mind racing with the implications. This new inform, as Rader sat in his cell, the reality of his situation was beginning to sink in. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, a fate he had once thought he could avoid. But for the families of his victims, the true challenge was only just beginning. They would have to navigate the complex and often painful process of healing, finding a way to move forward in the face of unimaginable trauma. On November 12, 2005, the Otero family would hold a press conference, speaking publicly about their experiences and the impact of Rader's crimes on their lives. The press conference would be a powerful moment as the family shared their story and their struggles with the world. It would also mark a turning point in the healing process as they began to find closure and move forward. For Landwehr, the case would be a defining moment in his career, a testament to his dedication and perseverance. On December 15th, Dennis Rader's world was crumbling. February 25, 2005, marked the day of his arrest. As he sat in the interrogation room, the weight of his secrets began to bear down on him. The man who had evaded capture for over 30 years was finally facing justice. Detective Ken Landwehr watched as Rader's composure began to crack. The serial killer's ability to blend in had been his greatest asset, but now it was his downfall. Landwehr would later reveal that Rader's ordinary appearance and demeanor had been a key factor in his success, allowing him to hide in plain sight. But as the evidence mounted against him, Rader's mask began to slip. On October 25, 2005, Rader stood in the courtroom, his fate all but sealed. The judge handed down a sentence of 10 consecutive life terms, a fitting end to the reign of terror that had haunted Wichita for so long. As Rader sat in his cell, the reality of his situation was beginning to sink in. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, a fate he had once thought he could avoid. The Otero family, still reeling from the trauma of Rader's crimes, held a press conference on November 12, 2005. They shared their story and their struggles with the world, a powerful moment in their journey towards healing. For Landwehr, the case would be a defining moment in his career, a testament to his dedication and perseverance. As the dust settled on the BTK case, one thing was clear. Justice had been served, and the people of Wichita could finally begin to heal. But for Rader, the true challenge was only just beginning. A lifetime of confinement, and the weight of his own dark legacy. As Rader adjusted to his new life behind bars, a new investigation began to unfold. On January 5, 2006, the Wichita Eagle published a series of letters from Rader to the journalist Hearst Laviana. The letters revealed a deep-seated obsession with his own notoriety and a desire to control the narrative of his crimes. Detective Landwehr would later comment on the letters, stating that they provided a unique insight into Rader's psyche. The letters also sparked a heated debate about the ethics of publishing the writings of a serial killer. On February 10, 2006, the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence issued a statement condemning the publication of Rader's letters, citing concerns that it could glorify his actions. Meanwhile, Rader's own family began to speak out about their experiences with him. On March 15, 2006, his daughter, Carrie Rawson, gave an interview to ABC News, describing her father as a normal family man who had hidden his dark secrets from those closest to him. As the public continued to grapple with the complexities of the BTK case, a new development emerged. On April 20, 2006, it was announced that Rader would be transferred to the El Dorado Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison in southeastern Kansas. The move was seen as an effort to reduce the risk of Rader being targeted by other inmates and to provide him with a more secure environment. But for Rader, the transfer would also mean a new level of isolation and a further disconnection from the world he once knew. The transfer also raised questions about Rader's ability to interact with other inmates and the potential risks of him influencing or manipulating those around him. On May 10, 2006, the Kansas Department of Corrections issued a statement outlining the measures that would be taken to ensure Rader's isolation and to prevent him from posing a threat to other inmates. As Rader settled into his new surroundings, one thing was clear: his journey was far from over, and the true extent of his legacy was still being written. What secrets might he still hold? Carrie Rawson's voice trembled as she described her father, Dennis Rader, to ABC News. A normal family man, she said, who had hidden his dark secrets from those closest to him. The interview aired on March 15, 2006, and sparked a wave of public fascination with the BTK case. But not everyone was pleased with the attention. The Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic